Good morning, everybody. So we're going to quickly dive into reimbursements. Most of this is true for round one and round two. It's one reimbursement form. It's one do's and don'ts. Those of you who are through round one know that there are some differences. A lot of you who went through round one have CPA 52s for your producers, so the practices are just a touch different at times. However, almost everything in the rest of the program is identical. If you have questions on round one stuff, please let me know and or Lisa, and we'll discuss with you or the field specialists. But that should be pretty easy to go through. So I wanted to kind of go through a few examples. I have 3 examples and some tips, if you will, for doing this thing. So we've changed the reimbursement form. We've simplified it immensely, hopefully, to make life really easy for y'all. I'm really trying to get rid of the fluff and make it simple. Saying that, there's 2 versions, an Excel version that has the math in it and a PDF that you can either fill in on the computer or you can print out and fill in by hand and scan and send back to us. So 3 different ways to get those to us, hopefully making that easy for you. If you have questions on any of that, please let us know. I'm going to go through some examples here quickly. If I can get my screen up here. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. All right, so the 3 examples, one of them doesn't have an explanation. 2 of them do have explanation that are actually on the grant guidelines sheet. So you can compare and contrast there. This is the first example. It does not have anything on the example grant guidelines that follows it, but this is an example that I made up from some stuff we were getting from individuals. So you can see how there's an opportunity for miles. This person didn't have any. You can see the labor is in here. We called this general labor using the CSU custom rate sheet, which I'm going to show in just a minute. At this rate that matched the rate and this many hours that came up with this many dollars. Additional activities and additional labor are all down here below. This is where you would put your materials, like in this example, oat seed. We put our field work. So this is the first year of that. We could have some field prep. The drilling of the seed using a no-till drill seeder or a drill seed reduced tillage implement, if that matter. And we put the tractor driver down here. Now this could have gone up here in labor just the same, but this person chose to put it down here. Here are all the rates for all these different things and an explanation. The explanation, well, let me start with the labor hours for the explanation. Should match what's actually on the custom rate sheet, so we understand what that is. You can also put what the practice is that they're using to implement that, but letting us know where you got that rate would be helpful. So please portray the actual hours for the producer that they put into the project. It's not just for us and our benefit, it's to help the producer understand what did this actually cost them to implement. It demonstrates that benefit or opportunity cost related to the activity that they're doing, this new activity, and how that's really going to help them understand what their margin is, if they're making money, if this is a challenging thing, where they can solve issues, and how we can have a good conversation. So if they don't tell me they put any hours in, I can't have that conversation with them. I mean, I can, obviously, but it helps us all be able to track it. So this is for them just as much as it is for us. Also, keep real specific things out of this explanation and stick to what specific conservation practice they're enrolled in. You can see right here for the drill seeder right here, it says to plant the cover crop. Pretty simple. You can also see the field prep was the residue and tillage management for reduced tillage. Really simple. These are the conservation practices this producer is enrolled in. I don't need anything else than that. Keep it simple. Stick to the conservation practices they're enrolled in. If you remember each district, we sent you a little table with the producer ID number and the practices they're enrolled in. This producer was also enrolled in mulching, and that's what this tractor driving was used for. Really simple. I don't need a really in-depth explanation. I just need to understand what they're doing and what went into each practice. Also, please attach receipts. Each receipt needs its own line. So if there was another receipt for another bed of seed, that would go on a different line. The receipt has to include what was actually in there. So if the receipt is just cover crop at this many dollars, that's not enough. I need to know how much, what the species composition of that seed mix was. So maybe I attach the invoice, but I really want to see that seed sheet. Here's what it looked like. And a lot of the seed companies are putting the seed sheet and the invoice all together. I'll take the one. That's just fine. If they're separate, that's fine too. But I also need to understand what the application rate was, 40 pounds per acre to plant the cover crop. Really simple. As long as it's all in here, it can be on the seed tag, but a lot of times we get a bulk seed tag with just a bulk rating. It doesn't give me an application per acre. I don't know if this producer used that same bag of seed over 100 acres or over the enrolled field 25 or 45 acres. So putting an application rate is essential. You can include the seed tag if you want, if they don't have a sheet. Take a picture of it, whatever you get. So I have what the species are and how much it costs and the application rate. Those are kind of the big things. I'm going to show you some other examples and we'll talk about some other things. So in terms of like what other materials are coming out. Miller, you got anything you want to add before I move on to the next example? All right, looks good. Okay. This example is on the grant guidelines and it's Appendix B, example 1 for Farmer Helen. It's all explained in there, but I put it in the sheet. So we have miles on this one, 833 miles to implement soil health practices. Pretty simple. If you wanted to put a little more detail, that'd be fine, but this is all we really need. This individual broke out both the general labor and the tractor driver into 2 separate pieces because they're very different rates. That's just fine. Which was again $35 for the labor at 20 hours. That's the custom rate. The tractor driver was to implement the conservation cover practice. Really easy, right? Explains it well. And the material was the seed at $3,500. And there's the seeding rate, 24 pounds per acre for the conservation cover. The receipt that included all the species and the price of that was included and attached to this. Very simple. Let me talk to you real quick about, the next one, I'll show you the rate sheet. So this one was really simple. So down here that totaled up to 6,000, we pay 1-to-1, 50% of that. At 40 acres, it all works out. So Farmer Helen signed it and so did the district manager. Pretty clear, right? Okay, the explanation is on the grant guidelines, Appendix B. Okay, good example. Rancher Bill, this is also Appendix B's second example. Has 250 acres enrolled in the program. They did not have any mileage, which is just fine. So people are going to ask about this particular one. This is the foreman rate. We're going to pull up the custom rate sheet. If I can get my little toolbar to hide. All right. Here's the CSU 2023 custom rate sheet. It was produced, I think they finally published it in June. So it hasn't been updated that recently, but if you have last year's, the rate, some of the rates are significantly different and higher, which is a good thing to get our producers a better rate. Here's the manager, and here are the ranges. Now, you can pick anything you want. You can pick the high end, the middle, whatever, but how about you pick what they actually pay the guy so you can understand what they're making. In this example, this individual is getting $5,000 a month for the opportunity or the, operation he's doing with this producer. So they wrote that, and it just happened to be the median for the Eastern Range. You can claim anything that's within the median, but my suggestion would be is to, within the range that's listed on here, find the thing that actually you're paying that individual to do the job so you can keep track of it. So this individual is at the $5,000 per month, and that's about what it took them to implement this practice. So that's what they put there in that framework, and that's just fine. And they have materials. They applied compost. There was $25,000 worth of that. This was to accomplish their soil carbon amendment practice, and the receipt was attached. So not only the receipt for the material, but also what the actual material makeup was and what the amendment analysis came from the company who gave them and sold them that product was attached on there. That's a key piece we miss a lot. If you get an amendment, it has to have a sample that comes with it. What was the analysis of that amendment if you put that on the field? That's just kind of a CYA type thing. So we're really working on collecting those. We want to make sure that folks are helping us understand what they're putting on the field so that when we do look at your soils tests, or when you take your own soil test, that also could be reimbursement, we can help understand what the picture of what's going on here. Okay, so here was your soil analysis. Here's what your crop yields are. Here's what you put on for your carbon amendment. Kind of here's how that all works out. And we can help walk through that together. For your nutrient related amendments, you have to have that soil sample, that amendment application rate, and that amendment analyses attached. If you're doing a prescribed grazing plan, it'd be great to actually include some sort of a plan. I don't need the whole thing, but do what you can. Attach the plan if you'd like, send me to your site, do something as documented. If we're paying for a grazing management plan, we have to be able to see that plan. Any sort of product that's being applied, fertilizer, amendments, compost, etc., all needs these attached receipts and all the materials as well. Please be sure to have your acreage, your application rates, and what's going on with that product in there. Finally, this total was $30,000 that it cost them to do this on this particular 250 acre enrolled field. They are maxing out their reimbursement at $5,000 a year. That's great. That shows the people who fund this that the dollar they invest goes a lot farther than the dollar they're getting back. And we love to have this kind of stuff because it helps us really do our reporting. And we use this data all over, aggregated, not specifically on you and pointing at you, but all the numbers get aggregated and pulled up and says, okay, for the dollar that was invested, our return on that investment was $5 or whatever it ends up being. And that's really helpful for us. So also, it can then go back to the producer and say, how did this work for you? You did this practice at this cost. Is that more or less than you would have with your traditional approach? And where can we find ways to help you think through what that looks like and how we can help you analyze this to get long-term benefits out of these new practices that you're implementing? And of course, please don't forget to sign this, both by the individual who submits it. This one also, this is the only example I have with notes in it, but they applied this at this at this application rate as a fungal dominated compost, which is great. Whatever you guys choose to do, but having a little bit of a explanation in here for something that's a little different would be really helpful for us.
Hey, Riza, do those signatures need to be any certain type of like wet signature or anything? It can just be a printed signature?
Yeah, I literally just, it's a fillable box. And if you just want to put it in italics or do anything to have it in there, it doesn't have to be an ink signature.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that
Please
we
make
started off
sure-
with,
Yeah, please make sure the signatures, both signatures are on the same form. Like I don't want to, we have two forms that you can
Yeah.
submit Excel file or PDF.
Yeah.
And I've like seen, some producers print it out and sign off, and then the district signs like the Excel, like digitally. Like we need the signatures on the same form.
right on. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Riza.
Yeah, sure. Anything we can do to make it easy, and that's an easy one for us for sure. We'll take whatever you got. Just attach them in one big PDF. That'd be great. If it has to be multiple pages, just stick them in one PDF. If you can't, we can handle it too. Whatever you guys need, we'll make sure it works out. Good question though. Okay, I know that was kind of quick and dirty and a lot of information, but hopefully that helps clear some things up. I can kind of dive in any of that a little deeper, or we can have conversations, or you can ask any questions you have. Whatever you need, we're here to help for a little bit here.
Can you go back to the first example you showed and go through the reimbursement? Because it showed like $12,000 spent, but only 36 reimbursed.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me pull that back up here for you, Regan. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep.
What's my screen? Every time I do something, it takes me a second to get myself oriented. Okay, so all this charges added up to $12,625 on this 45-acre piece. High or not, it is what it is. So this person has a 45-acre parcel that they've submitted. And so that 45 acres needs to be multiplied by $75 per acre, because that's the maximum reimbursable, allowable reimbursement. So they could invest $35,000 in this, but they can still only retrieve from the program $3,375. That's their max. That's that acreage rate multiplied by 75. And that'd be the minimum 1,000 to the maximum 5,000. So if this person was trying to get 5,000, they would have had to enroll more acres to get that. But since they didn't and enrolled the 45-acre field and multiply that by the 75, and we're within that 1 to 5,000, so that's what they get.
So in my case, where I have quite a few producers that have small acreage, that 1,000 will be the base, and then what they spent above and beyond that can be added to it?
Yeah, so the idea behind the total match claimed is to track all the expenses you have, whatever acreage you're implementing it on. Now, the minimum they'll have to have for that 1,000 minimum is a $2,000 worth of expenses tracked and matched on the sheet. So yeah, if they're only a 5-acre field, they would get that minimum $1,000. If they are above that, they would get 75 times whatever the acreage is, above 1,000. I mean,
Got it. Thank you.
great. Thanks, Regan. Yeah, Greg.
Hey, Rizza, yeah, I really like the way you guys do this and how general it is, and how you're looking for succinct and short explanations on what's going on. My only question on this one would be, how would you view harvest on this? Let's say they were using large equipment to minimize disturbance, or some technique like that. What would you do there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of places we could add some more labor. If it was a tractor driver time, you could put the tractor driver time in there as well. They could have added another line that had something related to that, whatever that particular operation was, and look at the custom rate sheet to see what fits best for the cost. So I think there's a lot of different ways to approach that, Greg. So maybe it's to do the mulching, and so they would add it there for the tractor driver, right? If they were leaving more stubble behind, or something like that. So there's a couple different ways, and if you guys need some specifics on like, oh, in this situation it's like this, then we could talk a little more specifically on that. But I think there's a lot of ways to look at that.
I was gonna say, reach out to us if you have specific questions like that, and we'll help you figure it out. We really want to know what people are doing too. So as we go through this, our intention is to know why you put what you did there as well.
Write a story, basically.
We want to know the story. You might not have to write it down on this page, but we want to know what's happening.
Few words, but yeah, the harvest is just another piece of this that I would think would be informative for other people, because he could have added one more thing in there probably, and put that in for expense as well. Anyway, okay, thank you guys.
Yeah, and even if, let's say it ends up being, let's say they were grazing this off, we can put that in the notes. We grazed this off at this many, cows for this many days. That's all great information. We want to use this for the producer. It's for them, to help them, and it's for us to have a good conversation with them. So whatever information you guys want to help the producer provide on these forms, we're happy to take those, and we're happy to read them. We read everything that comes across our desk. We don't just throw it in the file cabinet. we want to help these folks. So yeah, that'd be great.
This is Annie Overland. I have a question. So I've got a rancher that I'm working with that is using vents, and the vents towers that are not towers, but the collars had like a faulty GPS in the spring. And a lot of people got these faulty GPS collars. So now vents they had to go into like really high production mode over the summertime, and now people are getting new stuff. But what's happening is they're not billing until the 15th of October. So even though they've delivered product, they say that they're not going to bill until October 15th, and we've called them like multiple times. So are you guys really hard and fast on that September 30th deadline for receipts?
Yeah, we sure are. And so here's one way to look at that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to do this, right? So we know that we can only give $5,000 to those really large. Let's say that person has 1,000 acres.
Yeah.
They could use their labor as their match.
Okay.
And still get what they need, or other things that can get them over that $10,000 in expenses.
And then get them the receipt next year.
Yeah, or whatever they did this year, they do that and they put the receipts in for next year's reimbursement. So I think there's a bunch of different ways we could do this, Annie. We know we want to help those folks get what they deserve in terms of their 75 times the acreage up to 5,000. And so if there's some other ways we can do that and still make sure they get that $5,000, I think that's just fine. And that works well.
I mean, like the towers, like they've already installed the towers.
Right. So
They
there's time and labor in doing that, right?
Yeah.
Which is a fine reimbursable expense. And so just think about making sure we can get up to that at least $10,000 minimum.
Okay.
So for the producers who are at that maximum repayment.
Okay. All right. Great. Great clarification. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And again, if there's stuff to kick to, after October 1st, go for it, right? That's always next year's opportunity too. So, but let's just make sure we're getting them that maximum rate that they have enrolled in.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
John, this is Jill Taylor. I have a question for you too.
Go ahead, please, Jill.
I was under the assumption on the custom rate form that they had to go by the median, but I noticed you used the high part in the range there, so they can choose that high part if that's what they want to do. Because like for example, in that general labor high level was 15 to 35. I thought they had to use 20, and you had 35 on your form.
Yeah, correct. So we can use the whole range. We want to have you guys put in what's most reflective within the range of what you're actually paying that individual to do the job. If you're paying that guy $95 an hour, well, find a different one that it fits in. So maybe that's your high level full time or something like that, right? So you're more than what you do not have to use the median. That's the answer to that. I think maybe historically they use that, but you do not have to use the median. It can be within this range and it can be the high end of the range. And I would recommend using that. But if you're paying the guy $28 an hour, again, put that on there because that's what you're paying them and you understand what the actual cost of that activity is. So yeah, that's what I would suggest. Does that help?
Yes, that does. Thank you. I just had a guy, he just the other day sent me some stuff and all he sent me was copies of his checks. And I was like, well, I need to kind of know what you did here. So kind of trying to figure out. So, yeah, if it was over that, then I guess we'll be okay. So I was just worried that if 20 was too little for him, honestly, then we'd be in trouble. So that helps. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I think the best thing we can do is try and find a place to put them that it fits in with what they're actually paying those individuals at an hourly rate and put the actual amount of hours you can guesstimate so that we can have that as close as we can to help them with that conversation. Well, you did those 200 acres and it only cost you X dollars an acre. What did it cost you when you did it conventionally or differently last year? And then what can we do to potentially look at those cost savings or other opportunities for that for next year? So yeah, you have all that range to work with. And you have those different high and low levels. Try and keep them on the eastern region, like Joe for you guys on the east side and western for the west and so on. Just so we can we want to use this as helping us understand where they fall.
All right, great. Thank you.
Great, good question. What else we got out there?
Something I'll throw out for reimbursements, if you're going to send a scan, like if I know some folks, it's just easier to print it out, work with the producer and like hand fill them in and then send a scan in. Please make sure that the scan is high enough resolution so we can read it. If it's too grainy and I can't read anything, I'm just going to have to send it back because I can't read it. And I don't know what, I don't know what you're claiming because I can't read it. So please make sure if you're going to go down that route for your submission to double check the scans are legible before you send them in.
Great. Yeah, that might be really helpful for us because it's sometimes really hard to read them. So for you folks who are round ones, we did make producer ID numbers for round ones. If you want that from us, we are happy to provide that, but don't worry about it. If not, you can submit the name and we have that. For round twos, we really would hope that you could fill in the producer ID, name, and contact info. It's a lot easier for all of us to just be able to quickly reach out to that producer if it's in there when we're having it, whether it's you or us, so that we can have that conversation. We will work with you guys first. And if you want us to go and reach out, we're happy to if you want to do that. But at least all that information's in there. And it's easy to do that instead of having to go through whatever tracking data you have to find their contact info. So please do all that, fill that out. I'm not just doing it because I got nothing better to do. We're doing it because we think it's going to make life easier for us. So.
Okay, any other questions about producer reimbursements? Any questions about eligibility, things that are eligible, things that are not eligible, anything like that?
I was just wondering if you would mind emailing those examples out to us, so we'd have that to kind of fall back on, if you don't mind, while we're working on ours.
Yeah, we're going to work on a follow-up email from today's info session that we'll get out to you as soon as the recording is ready, sometimes by tomorrow. It will have these and the links. I'll have all the good stuff we talked about. I'll have these key discussion points, the recording of this, everything will be on there just for you guys. So, yep.
Okay, thanks. I think that'd be helpful.
No problem. And remember, if you check in the grant guidelines, those word explanations are on there and an example, but I will make sure that all three of these are in there for you.
Yeah, we also do have our overview of producer reimbursements document on our website too. That summarizes things that are eligible, things that are not eligible. So definitely reference that as well as you start working on producer reimbursements. Okay, so if there are no other questions, I think we can end things here. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Hopefully this was helpful. Yeah, if you ever have any questions, please feel free to reach out. And please remember that our next info session will not be September 2nd on Labor Day, but it will be the 9th. And we will update the calendar event. So you guys should hopefully see that updated in the next day or two here. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you.